In World War II, my grandfather located an Italian town that was long deserted, even prior to the war. He and his fellow soldiers searched the buildings, finding only a logbook with scribbled paragraphs. He hid the book for years until his death, where I received his war mementos, and in a lockbox was the journal. The following are its contents, albeit roughly translated. 12 p.m., hour 1. The church bell rings. The minister has a heart attack on the front steps of the small chapel. The remaining 47 members of our town, myself included, gather around him in shock and sadness. Hour 2. The church bell rings. As rain falls outside, the town doctor falls over the minister's body, dead from what is said to have been a massive stroke. His apprentice breaks forward from his tutor's house and exclaims the horrible news. The town is devastated. Hour 3. The church bell rings. As we all enter the church under the town's older direction, a gunshot rings out from the town square. People begin screaming and running as the town baker lies dead, a warm pistol in hand. Hour 4. The church bell rings. We sit nervously in the pews of the church, listening to our elder's wise and calming words. At the last stroke of the bell, the elder stops speaking. Bugs fall from his mouth. He begins to vomit thousands of the creatures. They pour from his ears and nose, and he falls as his head strikes the podium atop the altar. He was dead before reaching the ground. Hour 5. The church bell rings. As we pack to flee our homes, we look outside to see a man running on the outskirts of town. Lightning tears through the blackened sky, and the man bursts into flames. His miserable screams pierce the rain and thunder. My mother weeps, and we accept that leaving is not an option. Over the next 4 hours, people lock themselves inside their homes. The bells bring the death of our neighbor's son, age 14. We knew this because his mother's shrieks could be heard long into the hour. They were cut short on the next bell, as they turned from sorrow to immense pain. We could not see what happened, but the father and daughter ran into the street for help. It was soon after the son, who previously thought dead, tore from the home and tackled his sister, ripping flesh from her neck. The father, acting swift, kicked the son in the face. The boy did not rise again. The daughter bled in her father's arms until she stopped moving at the next chime. The father stood. 3 hours, and his family lay dead around him. By the next hour, we could see his body through the window, dangling from the rafters. By hour 9, a fight had broken out between 3 drunken degenerates. They fought mercilessly, as if blaming each other for this. After minutes of the fighting, the bell chimed. The first man fell on his face, as blood poured from where he had been stabbed. The other 2 as well had horrid injuries, and at the next 2-hour marks, they would die in the rainy street. Hour 13. The church bell rings. We'd regathered in the church, despite it being 1 in the morning. Everyone silently resolved that if we sit and pray, we cannot aid this curse. However, lightning is heard loud at the next ring, and a flaming wooden beam falls upon an elderly woman. We all attempt to flee, and while most are successful, others are not. The wooden section of the church collapses, leaving only a bell tower, and over the next 8 hours, the muffled screams under the heavy rubble slowly disappear. Hour 21. The bell rings. We all sit, huddled in our homes. The black clouds have lowered over the bell tower and onto the roofs of our homes. As the chimes ring out, footsteps are heard atop the houses. A man is heard screaming in the distance. Hour 22. The bell rings. The world is dark as night, the black fog thick upon us. In the dim light of the lanterns, a man can be seen in the streets. He knocks on the door of the tavern, and the lights go out. Many screams are heard, and we are certain death is imminent for at least one. Hour 23 through 30. The bell rings. The man is inside the tavern. Wails and moans are heard, but each hour less and less. Upon my mother falling asleep from exhaustion, I left briefly to see within. Bodies were hung from hooks, and the dark man from the street waited with a butcher's cleave until the next ring of the bell. A brief glance stole sights of intestines and blood caked upon the floor and walls. Hour 31. The bell rings through the blackness. All but 17 remain. Families, women, children. The final chime reveals the man leaving the tavern and entering a nearby house. The walls are horrendous. He started with a child. Hour 32. The bell rings. The mother had been shrilly crying inside her home until a fire started. She died at the last stroke of the bell. Hour 33. The bell rings. The man has disappeared. I hear my mother downstairs crying. I leap up, rifle in hand, to see what is the matter. She is cradling the still form of my sister. The next 12 hours are spent in silence, at least in our home. My mother cries softly, and I sit readily. Each hour, another house darkens, another life ends. Hour 46. My mother is dead. She raised me these 17 years. She was a godly woman and wise. She died in her sleep, and for that, I am thankful. I am alone. I heard a man in the street screaming. It is the doctor's apprentice. Hour 47. The apprentice died. He was outside screaming incoherently. I watched him. He wandered and collapsed, weeping. I then saw a figure, not like the man from before. It was inhuman. It approached the crying apprentice. I turned my head as I heard the screeching pain from the apprentice. I am writing this, with no more than 15 minutes left. My name is Paul. I was born August 12th, 1909, Catholic. I love you, Mother. It's knocking outside. It's inside. It's on the stairs. It is right outside my door. Fair. With that, the journal cut off with a dashed line, and the rest of the pages remain blank.